감사합니다.
My friends, when I was a child, I was very smart. That's what my mom tells me. So my mom tells me I learned to read at the age of 18 months. And as a teenager, my IQ was measured at 156. And then I was very skinny, right? So there was a time when my IQ was higher than my cholesterol. And then when I was 12 years old, I taught myself to program a computer. And by the way, that was 1982, right? And computers are like hard to learn, so it was a big deal back then. So by 15, I won my first national award in Singapore in programming. And then I just kept on winning more awards. So I was on TV, I was in the news. And so I was very lucky. I'm one of those people who's lucky enough to be very good at what I did at a very young age. So starting from young, I was already very successful at what I did. So all of us Asians, we grow up thinking that if we are successful, we'll be happy, right? And then I was successful at a young age. So was I happy? No. I was deeply unhappy. Not just deeply unhappy, I was miserable. Not just miserable, I was suicidal. It was that bad, right? For many years, I kept thinking of killing myself. Things were that bad. What to do? So because I was so desperate, I kept searching for a way out of suffering. So I looked everywhere. I looked at science, I looked at philosophy, nothing helped me. So I started looking into religion. Right? So I tried to learn like Christianity, Taoism, Hinduism, and of course Buddhism. And what happened? Nothing helped. So you might wonder, my friends, why is it that Buddhism wasn't helpful to me? So I grew up in Singapore in the quote-unquote Buddhist family. And I put Buddhist in quotes because when I was growing up, the Buddhism that I saw was basically idol worshipping, superstition. Right? So I saw adults going to temple and praying to the statue and asking the statues for favors. Usually three things. Usually ask for health and safety, right? Ask for the kids to do well in school, and ask to win the lottery. So these are the three usual things. Yeah, I'm sure some of you had this same experience growing up. So those things to a young person wasn't very attractive. So I didn't get it. And then by the time I was a teenager, I tried to learn Buddhism. And what happened? What I saw back then, trying to learn Buddhism, was a bifurcation. Right? There are like two extremes. So on one extreme, I saw what I learned was very basic teachings on ethics. So don't steal, don't lie, be a good person, be good to everybody. So that's what I learned. Essentially, those are the things that my mom tried to teach me at 5 years old. And I went to a lot of Dharma talks, and they keep telling me the same thing. Be a good person, don't lie, don't cheat. I said, okay, this is very good. But how does that help me in my suffering? It didn't help. On the other extreme, there were philosophical teachings that I didn't understand. To me, they were completely incomprehensible at that time. For example, the teaching was, there's no difference between subject and object. Emptiness is form is emptiness. Right? There is no suffering, and there's no end of suffering. The way to meditate is to not meditate. And I was like, none of it makes sense to me at that time. And so because none of it makes sense to me, it wasn't helpful. So what to do? So what changed? What changed that got me to the person I am today? What changed was I went to church. So what happened was I was 20 years old and was invited to a church. And specifically, it was a Pentecostal church. So for those who don't know what it is, there's a charismatic service. Like you go to church and people speak in tongue, and then they shiver, and then they cry, right? A lot of crying. And I was like, whoa, this is cool. I love it, right? So the reason I loved it is because I saw for myself how they flush away the suffering. So every week on Sunday they come here, they cry, and all the suffering flush away. Then they go back for 6 more days of suffering. And I was like, okay, I know in this church there's nothing, the answers they give me, nothing made sense to me. But it doesn't matter, because I come here once a week and I cry. And then my suffering goes away. I found it. That's what I told myself, I found it. So that was great. So by coincidence, the week after that, I met a nun, a Tibetan Buddhist nun. Her name was Venerable Sangye Kadro, and she's American, but in the Tibetan tradition. So I met her, and I asked her that question. I said, look, last week I went to church, and I saw for myself how our Christian friends deal with suffering. Then I asked her, what is there in your Buddhism that deals with suffering? And Venerable Kadro says, all of Buddhism is about dealing with suffering. All of Buddhism is about dealing with suffering. And when I heard that, it was as if somebody opened the floodgates and all the water just rushed in. I had that experience. And when I had that experience, I was like, I knew I was this close to the answer. I didn't know what the answer was, but I knew I was this close. So again, by coincidence, the week after that, the Venerable was coming to my university to give a talk. So I attended the talk. And in the middle of the talk, there was one sentence. And the one sentence she says, it is all about cultivating the mind. I say that again. It is all about cultivating the mind. And when I heard that, everything in my life suddenly made sense. Everything in my life just made sense. And I told myself, I've really found it. I found the answer. And I told myself at that moment, I said, from this moment on, right here, right now, I'm a Buddhist. And I was 20 years old, and I never looked back. That was the best decision I've ever made in my life. So after that, not long after that, I met a revered meditation teacher from Sri Lanka. His name was Mr. Godwin Samararatne. And then I learned mindfulness from him. And that, my friends, changed my life. How so? It started very simple. It started with just placing a gentle but continuous attention to the process of breathing, and then to the body. Okay, and then what? And then what happened was, if you place attention to breath and body, what happens? What happens is, after a while, the mind gains 2 qualities, which is calmness and clarity. Right? The mind becomes calm and clear. And the analogy is like a snow globe. Right? The snow globe is constantly being shaken, it's always unclear. Right? If you stop shaking it, what happens? It calms down, and the snow settles, and it becomes clear. Calm and clear mind. The calm and clear mind does something else, which is the mind becomes alert and relaxed. And so I learned to be in that mind, alert and relaxed, and then something happened after that. In the mind that is alert and relaxed, one time, I suddenly experienced a gentle joy in my entire body and mind. That's from nowhere. There's just this joy in my whole body and mind. And it lasted for about 30 minutes. And that, my friends, was my first real life-changing experience. I was like, whoa, what just happened? After a while, I realized that it's a skill, which is the more I practice, the more easily I can access that joy. And after a while, it becomes like on demand, because I become so skillful at it, I can sit and I have that joy arising. And that was truly life-changing. And with that, I saw clearly how Buddhism would be the solution to my misery. This was the solution. And eventually with that, I lifted myself out of depression. In other words, my friends, Buddhism saved my life. I say that again. Buddhism saved my life. It was that powerful. Thank you. Buddhism, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I dare say, it is the most awesome thing in the world. So later on after that, my life took kind of a strange turn. So in the year 2000, I joined this tiny startup company called Google. And of course, you know the rest. Google eventually became a huge company. So in the year 2003, about 3 years after I joined Google, I was taking a walk outside the Google campus. And then something happened. While taking that walk, I suddenly had a moment of clarity. I suddenly knew what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, which was to create the conditions for world peace in my lifetime. World peace in my lifetime. That's what I want to do for the rest of my life. I suddenly had that clarity. And I knew the way I wanted to do it. The way I wanted to do it was to scale inner peace, inner joy, and compassion worldwide. Because I figured if these three qualities are worldwide, peace, joy, compassion, then we have the conditions that is suitable for world peace. The only question is how. So fortunately, by then I've been a meditator, a Buddhist meditator for more than 10 years. So I know how to train the mind to develop inner peace, inner joy, compassion. So the only problem I had to solve then is how do I encourage other people to do it? So once again, same question, how? And then I figured it out. I figured out that the way to do it is to align peace, joy, compassion, so goodness, with success and profits. Right? If I go around the world in audiences and tell them, no, peace, joy, compassion, this is really good. We should all do it. What happens? Everybody say, yeah, they clap. And then they go home, nothing changed. However, if I say, okay, this is how you become more successful. This is how you make more money with peace, joy, compassion as unavoidable side effects. What happens? People say, yeah, I want to sign up. Right? Why they want to sign up? Because they want to be successful. They don't mind being happy. So that was the solution. Again, the only question was how to do that. And so the way I did that was I brought together a team that created a curriculum called Search Inside Yourself. And the idea was to help people become successful by training these qualities, peace, joy, and compassion, through meditating, through mindfulness. And it turns out to be very successful because people they gain promotions, and they also reported that they become more peaceful and happier, and they're kinder to other people. So SIY, Search Inside Yourself, became the most popular class in Google. The story was that, the classes, if I put it online, it just fills up in 30 seconds. So in 2012, I wrote a book called Search Inside Yourself, and then it became the international bestseller. And then in Korea, because of all you, my friends, it became the #1 bestseller. And and then it became the gold standard of mindfulness in the corporate world. So I was all very lucky. I was able to do that. So friends, that's my story. That is how meditation practice that comes from Buddhism can change people's lives. So you might wonder, how was it that I was able to teach these practices that come from Buddhism? How was I able to teach them to a wide secular audience? The reason I was able to do that was because the Buddha was a super genius. So what does that mean? You see, enlightenment is undescribable, cannot be described. To describe a path towards something undescribable is very, very hard. That's why it takes a genius to do it. That's why there's so few people in history that manage to do it. And in order to describe that path in a way that is perfectly understandable and helpful to everyone, to even a person like me, even harder. It takes a genius's genius to do that. And the Buddha was that genius's genius. But wait, it gets even better. The Buddha also made his teachings in such a way that 2,500 years later, it is compatible with modern science. Why? Because the Buddha kept emphasizing investigation, investigation, investigation. So it is perfectly suited to modern science today. And the practices taught by the Buddha, even today, is perfectly suitable to secular people. Again, why? Because a Buddha, again in his genius, he kept a set of objects for meditation training to things that are understandable to everybody, even to me. For example, he says, bring attention to the breath, the body, right? In mental and emotional states. He didn't say bring attention to chakras, right? To energy, to God. Because chakra, energy, God, it's like, as an engineer, I don't get it. But our body, mental state, I get it. Right? So the set of objects are accessible even to me. And because, if I get it, everybody gets it. Right? So even to me, and that's why everybody can get it. So also, even better, the Buddha never said that you have to pray to any God. He also never said you cannot pray to any God. And because of that, his teachings are useful to people whether or not they have religion and whatever religion they have. Right? Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, no religion, never mind. It's still beneficial. It's amazing. The Buddha's teaching had all these features. So if you think about it, the Buddha created a teaching that is powerful enough that it can bring people all the way to full enlightenment, or arahanti. And it is understandable even to me. And it stood the test of time. And it is perfectly compatible with modern science. And it is perfectly compatible with the secular world and people of other religions. There are no words, my friends, to describe the level of genius that the Buddha showed. He's such a genius, right? And because the Buddha was such a super genius, I didn't have to do anything. So by the time I got to do my work, all I do is to just import the Buddha's teaching wholesale, and then just describe it in a way that even I understand. That's it. So easy, right? Because the Buddha is such a genius. Buddhism is that amazing. In closing, my friends, first I want to thank all of you for inviting me to speak here to this wonderful audience. It's such an honor to be invited. And I want to close by reminding all of us how lucky we are especially the Buddhists in this audience and those listening to me online. We live in an age where all of us have access to Buddha Dharma. More importantly, all of us in this room, we're so lucky, but more importantly, the people in this room, we are extra lucky because we don't just have access to Buddha and Dharma, we understand Buddha and Dharma. More importantly, this treasure was given to us for free. And Buddha Dharma is so valuable. Look at me. Who am I? I'm nothing. I'm nobody. And what did I do to deserve this? Nothing. I didn't do anything. And it was given away to me for free. Saved my life. Changed my life. And I didn't even deserve it. I want to encourage all of my Buddhist friends in this room and listening to online, all of you, I want to encourage all of you to study the Dharma, practice the Dharma, and most importantly, friends, practice your meditation. So that together, we can create the conditions for world peace in our lifetimes. Thank you so much.